good to go. Are you ready for us to unmute?
But if somebody starts printing to the copier, you don't want that noise coming through.
Or the ice machine starts making.
Did you tell the people we're going to be live at 5? We're doing an audio check, but you can just tell them.
Ready? Hi, ladies and gentlemen. We will be live in approximately 3 minutes. 3 minutes we'll go live. So. Good afternoon, Roadrunners, and thank you for joining us for our first ROOST talk on the instructional time model for the Holbrook High School for this coming year. And we wanted to reach out to our parents and our students and our staff to discuss the ITM model a little bit more in depth today. We have some members in our audience, so thank you for joining. If there is anything that you have a question on, please just raise your hand. We'll repeat the question out to the audience, and we'll try to answer everybody's questions the best that we can throughout the afternoon. I want to introduce Mr. Hargrave. Mr. Cleet Hargrave is our high school principal. We welcome him here this afternoon. And we also have social studies teacher, Mr. Dan Mitchell, joining us. So we're going to jump right into the format today, which is going to be an overview of the instructional time model and what that looks like and what that means for Holbrook High School. It's an innovative way to be able to educate our kids on a particular Friday and give them the opportunity to have some flexibility in their schedules on Friday. So a lot of really good positive things happening with the instructional time model, and we'll get deeper into that as we go. We'll have Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Hargrave kind of outline the procedures and processes of the instructional time model here at Holbrook High School. So they'll go through what it looks like for your students and for you as parents. And then we'll have a question and answer session as well. We have some pre-populated questions. We've been studying this for the last almost a little over a year. We've held 2 public hearings on this. And now we've actually met with our students, and we've generated some questions from our students as well. And now we are ready to kind of finalize things before we start our instructional time model that will begin on Friday, September 9th. So let me give you a little background on the instructional time model and how this came about. So House Bill 2862 was passed in this 2020 session. And House Bill 2862 allowed school districts during the pandemic, and really this was a positive coming out of the pandemic, is maybe there's other ways that we can look at instructional time for our students versus coming to school from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock every single day, 3:30 at the high school, riding a bus every single day. Are there other alternatives that we can look into besides an online program, which Holbrook High School does not offer and Holbrook Unified School District doesn't offer because of the lack of internet access that's uniform throughout our district boundaries? And so we've looked at this as a potential option to offset the notion of a 4-day school week. And then last year we implemented the 4.5-day school week, and that allowed our students to have a half a day, but they only went to half of their classes, which caused some complexities with getting their full 7 periods in. So when this bill came about, which allows for originally 50% of the academic year can be virtual, not 100%, but 50%. And then this year, it was implemented to have 40% of the academic school year of instructional time can be remote or virtual learning or alternative learning of some nature. So we took advantage of that new statute change, and we thought, how can we integrate this into Holbrook High School to allow for some flexibility for our students, many of these students are running our production today. How can we help them to, if they're successful in mastering the standards, how can we help them to have more remote learning opportunities? Because a lot of our kids do ride the bus an hour plus, one way to get to school. So that's a challenge to do that 5 days of a week. Can they learn at home? Is there opportunities for us to deliver instruction into the home? And so we set that threshold at 75%. And if they meet the 75% threshold in all of their classes, then is there an opportunity for them not to attend instruction on campus on Fridays? So we thought that could be an innovative way to take some of the things that we learned during the pandemic and implement it now that we're hopefully post-pandemic, and make our system better and make it more suitable to the student population that we have. So we are allowed by statute to allocate up to 40% of our instructional time to be remote learning. And we've looked at it specifically for the concept of Fridays. So students have to be, at the high school, they have to be in 720 hours of instruction to be considered a full-time student. So they are all going to be held accountable for 720 hours of instruction throughout the year. It may not be the full 720 hours on Holbrook High School campuses, Monday through Friday, from 8 o'clock to 3:30 or 7:55 to 3:30. They may have the option, if their academics are up to par, are they able to do some of this remote learning on Fridays at home and not have to physically come onto our campus? They can, and we'll explain that more in depth. They can come on Friday, but we want to allow the opportunity for them if they're mastering the course content of their 6 or 7 courses that they're taking. Can they do that remotely? So that is all allowed under the statute, and we have to be very considerate of making sure that we capture the full, what we call average daily membership for our students through the system that we operate. So we talked about how much time can be remote. 40% of the time can be remote. We will be less than 40 because of we're only doing this on Friday. So that's going to just be the Friday time. But there may be opportunities if we have, you know, as much snow as we've had rain, and we need to have a snow day, so to speak. The instructional time model will also allow us to deliver instruction on those days at home, and it will count as instructional time during the school year. So the traditional model of being on campus, being in a classroom, is still very traditional at Holbrook High School, but we are also looking to be creative and be able to deliver instruction outside of the classroom setting, outside of the school setting when applicable. So if we have a bad weather day, we can deliver that instruction, and specifically through our 2-to-1 initiative, meaning that every student has the opportunity to have a computer at home and a computer at school, which is part of this initiative as we've set things up for this to be successful. So we're looking at the 40%, below 40%, but it can be an opportunity up to 40%, and you know, maybe in the future we'll look at other options for that. So you can go above the 50%, but then there's financial penalties because of the 720 hours, so we're not going to exceed that 40%. So we're going to jump right into it, and Mr. Hargrave and Mr. Mitchell are going to answer some of your questions about the practicality of this program. And I'm going to be here to kind of facilitate the conversation, answer, or hopefully facilitate questions that we have from the audience. If you are posting, I believe that you can post your questions online, and I should be able to have access to that. And we don't have any at this point, but if you do, you can post those online, and I will be able to see those, and I can deliver those questions to any of the three of us. So one of the things that we did early on when we started thinking about this, can we do this? Is this something that might be suitable for Holbrook High School? We went to our students first. Well, actually, we went to our teachers first, and we said, we had a group of teachers, and we said, would this work? Would this be suitable for Holbrook High School? And it suits well for a high school setting versus an elementary. And that's one of the questions that we've had. Why don't we do this throughout the entire district? High school students are more independent. They should be developing more independence, and we believe that they're more academic oriented to be able to do independent work. So that's why we're starting at Holbrook High School. And one of the students in our assembly asked, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this? We believe there's several reasons to do this. But number one is because our kids literally get on the bus before 6 a.m. sometimes. They ride the bus into Holbrook, and even in surrounding areas around Holbrook. They start class at 7:55. They end their school day at 3:30. They get back on the bus. They ride the bus to their home. They get home at 4:30, 5 o'clock at night. They have other activities that they have to do, and then they're doing their homework, and it's just a tedious process. So in the middle of the day, there's not a lot of time for that extra support, especially if you're needing support in certain classes. So we felt like that would be an opportunity to be able to recognize those students that are not in need of extra support to continue their academic learning through remote learning. But if they are in need of academic support, then we would have the Fridays to be able to run the instructional time model. And we'll get into what that looks like. And if you are an athlete or you're doing after-school activities like many of these kids are doing, then you're not getting back on the activity bus until 6 o'clock. You're getting home at 7 or 7:30, then, I mean, that's a late night, right? So there's nothing within the high school environment, schedule-wise, to be able to help students to be successful if they're struggling in their coursework. There's some after-school tutorial and those kind of things, but what can we do on a Friday to designate some of this time to master their grades or their content in those specific classes? So that's really the primary reason. This also kind of preps our kids for a college environment, a work environment, a remote learning, a remote work environment. That's becoming somewhat of a norm now. So there's many different tiers to this. It gives the teachers an opportunity to meet with students more often, that they are able to help them through some of the remediation if they're struggling in class. It can also allow for some acceleration, some enrichment if they're doing well in their classes. We also have a program called Grow Arizona that we have here at Holbrook High School that allows our kids to come in and talk about college readiness, career readiness, fill out their FAFSA, fill out scholarships, and we don't really have a lot of time for them to do that because they're in classes most of the day. Fridays, Grow Arizona will be on our campus, and that is a good time to fill out scholarships, to look at colleges that they might want to go to, fill out applications for work. Those kind of things that are services that we should be able to provide at a high school, but we don't have the time to provide them. So we're looking at this as an opportunity to expand the time and the opportunities that we have with our kids. So who's eligible for the ITM, the Instructional Time Model? All 9th graders through 12th graders. This is going to be an entire high school production. We're not doing this at the junior high. We're still half days at the junior high. We're still half days at the elementary school. Indian Wells Elementary School does not have school on Fridays. So that's the structures up to the high school. At the high school, then any student will still be able to come back and go to a half a day of school on Fridays. So they'll still have their 7:55 to 11:55 classes on Fridays. That's still an option for everybody and will be a requirement for some students to come back during that time. But they'll still have a half a day of instruction on Fridays. So let's start with what the ITM is going to look like. Mr. Hargrave, would you like to explain just the basics of what the instructional time model will look like?
Yes. So as you mentioned, it's going to be based on the students' mastery in the classes, whether or not they're required to be here on Friday. So during the week on Wednesday, we will run a report of students who of their grades, and if they have above 75% in all of their classes, they would not be required to attend in person. If they are below 75% in one or more of their classes, they would be required to attend in person on Friday. And so what would then happen during that time is they will be able to go to those classes where their grade is less than 75 and get some additional support. And for students who are above 75 and they choose to come in person, because they still have that option, they would have other enrichment activities available to them, like meeting with Grow Arizona. We have the Arizona College Consortium's already scheduled one of the Fridays to come out and put on a college fair. Grow Arizona is working on a career fair. So there's several activities. They may go to some of their elective classes and work on a major project that typically couldn't be accomplished in one period. They would now have additional time on Friday because they're caught up in all of their classes, so they have some freedom to go and engage in what we're calling enrichment activities. They're still college and career focused, they're still focused on state standards, but they are not what's covered in the normal scope and sequence of the class. Transportation is still provided, food is still provided. So that's kind of a broad overview. You want me to go into more detail?
Let's touch on a couple things. First of all, transportation will still be provided on Friday. So kids will still have the bus routes that they normally run, and they'll be picked up at the normal times. They'll arrive at school at the normal times. Food service will be offering breakfast on Fridays. They will attend, as Mr. Hargrave will go through kind of the schedule, the mock-up schedule that we're working on. And then at the end of the day, they will be provided food service through the lunch program. And then they will get on the bus by 12:15 at Holbrook High School. They will be transported home. So even if you're struggling in some classes below 75%, you still have the opportunity for a half a day on Friday, because I think that becomes important to kids. And you know, education is stressful. It's extremely stressful. There's a lot of information that we're trying to give to our kids. We're asking them to do a lot of things. We're on top of the schedule that we've already talked about. So that's why this Friday opportunity is maybe going to reduce that homework stress, maybe reduce that that opportunity to how do I cram for this test? Maybe that's some of the things that can occur on Friday so that they can be successful. And really our outcome is 100% graduation rate. I really believe that we should have a 100% graduation rate with us giving this level of support during the academic school day. That will be our ultimate goal. We want all kids to pass. And one of the questions is probably, well, why 75%? Well, 75% is what we're categorizing as kind of a mid-C. They're mastering their classes. That might be that their potential is an A. They could work to get an A. That could be part of what they do on Fridays. But if they're below 75%, we really believe that 75% is the mastery score for our coursework at this time. May go up to 80, it may go down to 70. We got to see how things work. This is a very fluid process, but for right now, we set the benchmark at 75%. And we've studied we've talked with other school districts that have implemented an ITM. They started at 70%, and they realized that 70%, 1% less gets you to a D. So let's work on 75%, and let's go from 75% all the way to an A status. So that's the purpose of that. So maybe, Mr. Hargrave, why don't you tell us about what a schedule might look like for kids on Friday?
Okay. Well, I'm going to step back 2 days. And Wednesday is when we plan on running our grade check. And this is going to be across the board. Athletics has also moved their grade checks to Wednesday. So we will run a grade check, and then our plan is to send out email communication to parents and students on Thursday that, hey, we've checked your grades. You are either, because you're above 75 in every class, you don't have to be here on Friday, but you're welcome to if you want to. Or you've got some classes below 75, you need to be here on Friday. So that information will come out in email to parents and students on Thursday. Our report will be run on Wednesday. So once a student gets that information, okay, I need to be there on Friday, they ride the bus just like they would normally. They get on the bus, they come, they get their breakfast, and they report to their 4th hour class. Now, we've been practicing this already. Everyone's been required to come on Friday so far, and we've been starting every Friday with 4th period because that's where we're calling it the pass class or their homeroom class. And so they will go straight to their 4th period teacher. They're just going to be there for a few minutes on our schedule here, 7:55 to 8:15. So 20 minutes, and what that time is going to be dedicated to is let's look over the grades. Let's make a plan for the day. Okay, I need to go see my math teacher because I'm below 75 to get some help. And this is when I'm going to do that during my time on Friday. I don't need to see my English teacher. My grade is up. So that's when I'm going to go see Grow Arizona for some college support. And, so during that 20 minutes with their 4th hour teacher, this is when they're going to make their plan for what's happening on Friday, what they need to go to. Once that 20 minutes are up, they're going to go to their first reteach period or enrichment period. That'll be for 40 minutes, so that might be with the math teacher, kind of depending on different grade levels. They might be going to math during that first hour, or they might be going to English during that first hour. So they'll be there for 40 minutes. Then they would go to the next reteach, the second reteach, for 40 minutes, and there will be 4 of those. So they have the opportunity to get support in 4 classes or participate in 4 different enrichments if they're all caught up, or some combination. Get retaught in 2 classes and then have opportunity to go to 2 of the enrichment offerings that day. After the 4th reteach period, they go back to their past class or their 4th hour teacher on a normal day of the week, and that's where we check for the afternoon attendance, just make sure everybody's stayed all day. They had their attendance taken in the morning, they go through their different sessions, they're coming back to that past period teacher, they're getting their second attendance to make sure they've been there all day, and then they would be released to lunch at 11:45, and buses would leave at 12:15.
Very good. So that's a basic structure of schedule. They'll have 4 periods, but they'll also have a past class beginning and the end, and it'll allow those student-teacher connections to have conversation about what needs to occur during that day, to check attendance, to make sure there's accountability, those kind of things that we want to make sure we have good structures in place to help our unique students develop. And so you talked about 4 periods. Will they only be responsible for 4 periods of instruction that day?
No. So let's say the students who are already at above 75 in every class and opted to not come to school, they would still be responsible for work in all 7 classes. They would get onto their Google Classroom, complete their assignment, and that's how their attendance for the day would be recorded. Now, the same thing for the students who do attend in person. They're going to get help in maybe 4 of their 7 classes. The remaining 3, they still have that virtual assignment that they're going to be responsible for to be marked fully in attendance that day. So we're working with the teachers to make sure they have an assignment in Google Classroom for all of their students. And if they're not in person, they'll complete it virtually. If they're in person and they go to that class, they would complete it in person, and the ones they didn't get to, they would complete virtually.
And those courses that they're responsible for the 7 periods, a regular scheduled day, it won't be the same type of instruction or requirements or assignments that we would normally find if they were in person going to each class that day. So what are we looking at, Mr. Mitchell, for some types of assignments that if they're only coming for 4 days or 4 hours, and then they are responsible for 7 hours, or they're virtually because they're above the 75%, what type of assignments do you think they will be assigned?
So what I'm looking at for my classes is assigning most of my work to be due on that Monday when we come back. And so my assignments are mostly going to be complete whatever assignments we haven't gotten done yet. And so those students who can do it online will be able to check in. We might have some students who are at home on Friday, but they don't have internet access. The way they would verify their attendance would be coming in Monday and turning in those assignments showing I was working, I was completing my portion of this agreement.
So part of the ITM is it really gives you flexibility. You can do it at night, you can do it over the weekend. We just have to have some levels of accountability to make sure that they did the work on that Friday, because we expect them to be doing the work that they would normally be doing on campus during those Fridays, but it's just not going to be at the same level. So we're continuing to learn, we're continuing to educate on Fridays. It's just a different model of how we deliver instruction as well as how students work. So much of it might be catching up on their homework. Much of it might be maybe doing an alternative assignment. It might be study groups. If kids can get on FaceTime, or they can get on some type of a platform where they can pair with other kids and maybe they do a small study group. We're still working through that process, but it's not going to be on Fridays a normal instruction day where kids are going to get a tremendous amount of work to do that Friday because they weren't in school. It's going to be reinforcement, it's going to be remediation, it's going to be enrichment, it's going to be hopefully building that mastery so that all kids get to that 75%.
Could I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So an additional assignment possibility that I am going to be continuing to encourage teachers to engage in from time to time is we're implementing AVID at the high school this year, and one of the focuses of AVID is teaching students organizational skills. And as a staff, we've really looked at how to take notes and how to appropriately use those notes to recall information that we've been learning in class. And so we're going to be making a push later in the year with the students about how do you take notes, and then how do you review those notes. And a possible ITM assignment is get out your notes that you took Monday through Thursday, and now is the time to go back and annotate, review, write your questions, write your summaries, and that would be what you turn into your teacher on Monday or virtually over the weekend, and that builds and reinforces the skill of I don't just take notes and never look at them again, I take notes and use them to remember what we've been discussing.
That's a great example. So it's revisiting what has been taught throughout the week. most likely it will not be like, here's a new assignment, figure out what the standards are, figure out what the content is, and make sure you complete this by Monday. It's going to be, we've already taught this, let's review this, let's master this, let's make sure that we're ready for our tests, let's make sure we're ready to complete all assignments, because Monday is going to be the important day to turn in those assignments to verify that they did their work on Friday. So they actually have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to do that type of work. So here's just some general questions that that we've had posed throughout the year, and we've got a frequently asked questions document that we will be able to post and let people look at. When will the ITM begin? Mr. Hargrave, you want to talk about that?
Well, the first Friday we have scheduled for ITM is September 9th. So that's when it'll begin, and September 7th is the Wednesday. That's when we would run our first real grade check. We'll do a couple of dry runs before then. The 8th is parent-teacher conference, but that's also when we would send out the email to the students and parents. And the 9th would be that first one where, okay, I'm going to check my email. Am I supposed to be there on Friday, or do I have the option of working remotely? So September 9th is the first ITM Friday.
And we purposely did that not to jump right into the ITM in August, because we definitely needed some weeks to kind of make this happen for our staff, make this happen for our students, and acclimate everybody to what our goals are. So what will teachers do on Friday, Mr. Mitchell?
Starting with the past class, we'll be helping students find their grades, figuring out what classes they should be focusing on and spending time at. The 75% is not necessarily the goal, that's the minimum. So we want students far beyond 75%. As much as we want a 100% graduation rate, we want to see A's across the board as well. So students who are still planning to show up, they should be thinking, this is not just, I got a 75%, I'm good, I'm golden, I'm done. They should be thinking, okay, now how do I get up to that 80%? How do I move up to 85 and so on? And so that's what teachers are going to be here to help with. Once they're done with the pass, we'll be having students moving to different classrooms. I'll be getting to see my social studies students. It'll be a great time for retaking tests, quizzes, getting extra help with assignments when they have questions. We are expecting a relatively smaller group of students showing up on Fridays because we're hoping that quite a few will enjoy this opportunity and use it to its fullest. And so it'll give us some more one-on-one, one-on-two or three, or small group kind of tutoring time to help those students get not just to 75, but to even higher than that. So
and I think, yeah, mastery and motivation. We don't want kids to go through our system and just because the system's moving this fast, that they have to move this fast as well. This pauses our system a little bit to allow kids to catch up, to allow them to have that extra attention and that extra academic time. So mastery is that 75%, and we want all kids to get to that, but it's also hopefully motivating. If students are academically prepared and they are doing a good job of turning their assignments in, they're doing a good job of completing their assignments to mastery, 75% or above, then they also have the opportunity not to get up on Fridays and come to school, or to ride the bus an hour and a half one way, or they may have other plans on Friday and they'll do their work on Saturday or Sunday. They'll cram Sunday night, whatever it might be, but that gives them the motivation to keep their grades up, to turn their assignments in, and then they basically have a 4-day school week, but they know that they have assignments in 7 periods throughout that, and some of those assignments may be able to be knocked out pretty quick, so it may reduce their instructional time over the weekends. Here's a good question. We may have some dorm parents out there watching this evening. Will it be the same schedule for dorm students?
Yes.
Yes.
That's
pretty
a
simple question.
simple one.
These are all a lot of our dorm students are running our system here, our cameras, and so the dorm students would be on the same schedule. You can walk across. You can come to your Friday, whether you need to. I would imagine that if you're 75% or above, you can stay into the dorm and continue to do your work over the week that you need for your 7 periods over the weekend, or you can come and you can be in this library and just do your work for those 7 periods. You can probably knock that out in 4 hours and be done for the weekend for 2.5 days. So yes, the dorm students will be on the same schedule as all of the students that are not in the dorm. What happens if you're below 75% and you don't come to school? That's a good question. What happens if you're supposed to be there on Friday, but you don't catch the bus, you just ignore it, you don't show up on Friday? What might happen in that situation?
Well, the first more obvious answer is you're marked absent. And absences do have consequences. Not only are you missing out on the opportunities for the extra support, but when you accumulate too many absences, you can receive a no credit in a class. So I think, missing out on that opportunity, missing out on, I'm accumulating too many absences, I might receive a no credit. Those are some potentially very serious consequences and could delay a graduation. We want 100% graduation, but if you're receiving no credit in the class, now all of a sudden you're going to be putting in that extra time you missed on Friday. Now you're doing it after school, you're doing it in summer school because you didn't get the credit you needed. So that's kind of the major consequence.
And go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, and part of the reason that a diploma is kind of a basic level of entry for so many jobs is we are trying to emulate and copy a lot of the skills needed to hold down a job. And I don't want to think what would happen if I missed any days without calling in, without following the proper procedures, and that's the end of my professional career here. So we're learning that now. They do get 10 absences. We do want excused absences as well, but they need to start getting this mentality, and even from freshman year on. I've had students work at McDonald's, and they said their first no-show or their second no-show, they were done working at McDonald's. So attendance is important.
Yeah, attendance is very important. It's a life skill. And the motto of Holbrook High School is helping students help themselves succeed, HHS. And I think we're fulfilling that mission. We're helping students help themselves. If the parents and the students decide that they are going to stay home on Friday, when we are opening our entire campus up to having academic support and enrichment, and they choose not to come, that's on the parent and the student at that point. We don't have that system right now. There's honestly, as a superintendent, this bothers me because I don't think we have enough built-in structures for students to have that in-school, during-school support. We have that now. That's what enticed me as I was studying this as a new statute. This could really help with our diversity, geographic diversity throughout our district. This could really help our students because they have that designated time, and that's really why we're moving towards that angle.
And so remember, if you get that email that says you need to be here on Friday, and then you don't show up, that's an absence. Now, if you get the email saying you don't have to be here on Friday, then you can complete your assignment online and you're marked present even though you weren't here in person. But if you were supposed to be here, you don't have that option of just going and completing it online and getting it marked present. Your presence was required in person and you were notified of that. So
yeah, that in-school support is very important. So what happens if they have a 74 in their math class, but they've got 75s in all or above in all their other classes? Do they have to come all for that full 4 hours on Friday?
Yes, they do. Yeah. And again, remember, 75 is the minimum. It's not the goal. So you might have 76, 77, 80. We're still wanting to work in all of those classes that you could possibly move up the grade.
So you could go to that one period that you
Yes.
need the assistance in, and then the rest of the time you could be working on the other courses and the assignments for the other courses, and by 12:15, you're done, right? You're done for the weekend. You don't have any homework. You don't have anything that you have to worry about until Monday morning, getting back on that bus and coming to Holbrook High School. So tell me, this is a question that was posed, is when at school will it be treated like a study hall?
So there may be some enrichment opportunities that would resemble a study hall, but that would be for students whose grade is already above the 75% threshold. They would be able to come, and as you described, maybe they're here in the library and they're working on some of those online assignments. But for those students who are below the 75% threshold, they would be expected to be in the classroom with the teacher getting the support in that class.
And we're being a bit visionary, and this is brand new. We've never done this before, so it's kind of a design and navigate as we go. But we've already talked about having student tutors. And this was a question and maybe a proposition that was posed by in our discussions is, can we have student tutors in here? Because sometimes students can tutor other students better than maybe teachers delivering that information or parents delivering that information. So, you know, we hope that that can also become, you know, if they're struggling in Algebra 2 and we've got somebody that can really teach and know Algebra 2 from a junior or a senior, maybe they can have their study sessions in there, kind of like a college environment. That's what happens in a college environment is you find another student that can tutor you in the course that you're struggling with. So if we can turn this campus into that type of environment and we can get all the logistical means worked out, I mean, that's only going to be good for our kids, and that's what we're here for.
And I do know, I heard today already that some of our child development students who are very confident, they said, I'm not going to be required to be here, but I want to come and use my enrichment time to go and help some of the students at some of the other schools.
Yeah. And that could be a possibility. You're just displacing time is all you're doing. You're saying, if I'm going to do this, I know I still have 7 periods of assignments to do. It might be review, it might be, you know, a short assignment. I'm going to do that on Saturday because I'm going to maximize my Friday time. So, Mr. Mitchell, I think this came from some of our students and maybe even our parents. Are teachers going to assign a ton of work for students to complete on Fridays that stay home?
So keep in mind, if we assign a ton of work, we then also have to grade, facilitate, create, and so on. So Fridays, one of the things we loved about the half day as well was having that extra time when students have left to get a lot of the tasks we had to get done. So my plan is not to create a bunch of extra work, especially because if I'm creating something difficult and I'm sending it home for some students without really much support because they're home, they're not with me, that is not my plan or goal at all. My plan is give students time to study, teach them how to use the focus notes, give them that time to do the summaries, answering the essential questions from our lessons, going back through and annotating, and realizing, wow, he only said that once, maybe it wasn't as important, maybe I don't need to study that, but he keeps saying the same thing over and over again. I need to highlight that, I need to study that, that seems important. Giving them that time. I wish we've done this in the past. Like with going through the pandemic, I kept telling parents who would call, the word of the year needs to be flexible, and it became the word of possibly the decade. And so this gives us some flexibility. We don't want to make it these rigid, difficult, extremely hard assignments without support. Like that's not a goal or a plan at all.
Yeah, we want them to master, right? So
Yes.
we're trying to get to where a course, whether that's social studies or algebra or English 9, we're trying to get them to the minimum proficiency and then accelerate them from there. And what we don't want is them to be below proficiency. Because below proficiency, even a D is not, in our eyes, not enough, not good enough. We need them to be proficient because they're our workforce. They're the kids that want to go to college. Those are the kids that are going to, we want everybody to qualify for scholarships if they want to go to college. We want them to be successful. And this gives them the opportunity to have that support in person. We have kids that get sick for 3 or 4 or 5 days. They've missed that time. Fridays would be a great time for them to come get caught up on their assignments. And sometimes in education, those 3 or 4 or 5 days that they missed in education is never made up. It's just figure the assignments out, turn them in, that's the grade. But now you can actually get some assistance. All of our aides will be on campus during that day. All of our office staff will be on campus. Every employee will be doing their normal operations just in a different way during that time. So. We have some parents in the audience here. Do you have any questions that we can field at this time? Go ahead.
Last year we had trouble with some of the teachers inputting the grades into their computers. That needs to be a top priority to teach those teachers to have it done by Wednesday.
So the comment was, the question was, will teachers be up to date on their grades so that their grades are reflective of the students' proficiency of 75% or above?
Yeah.
You guys want to?
My communication to the teachers at the beginning of the year is, yes, that is a professional responsibility and expectation to make sure that grades are up to date. And we just had a communication earlier this week that, hey, we're beginning our first grade checks for athletics. Your grades need to be up to date. You need to make sure you're entering 2 to 3 assignments per week so that students have an accurate reflection of their learning in the grade book. And as principal, part of my responsibility is to monitor that is being done.
And we kind of realized this very early on, just like you did, that if we're not keeping up to date, and some assignments do take longer. You know, a big essay might take a week or two to get through 100 essays. Tests can sometimes take longer, but the basic assignments, we need to keep up with that.
And it will be the missing assignments that a student might have over multiple days of being gone for a football game or being gone for being sick or out of town or whatever, that they're late on their assignments. So there's going to have to be some flexibility on that, because we're going to try to get it as much as, you know, teachers have caseloads of 150 kids. So that's a lot of kids when you're trying to grade assignments. We do a lot. We're trying to make more of those kind of gradable by a Google Classroom or ways that we can electronically grade those. But it still takes a lot of hand grading for a lot of the high school assignments.
So what I'm hearing is I've had 4 football players at my house for lunch, and they're like, if we come in on Friday because we're below the 75, there's no way we can play that game that night because we can't turn them in. Is that right?
Well, they have to meet the eligibility deadline.
So they can turn them in, but if they are ineligible when that report comes out and it's communicated Wednesday, the ineligibility is for a week, okay? And so they still need to come on Friday, they need to get it made up, but that their week isn't up yet, okay?
But the Fridays, hopefully, will be time that they can get all that stuff. See, we don't have that right now. We don't have the built-in. So what coaches do is they have a study hall after school. They're missing practice because we don't have that built into the structure. So we're hoping that resolves some of these problems, but it's going to take a partnership of the student-athlete, the student, the parents, the coaches, and so forth. And part of our goal is to have Friday practices in the afternoon. So they would come in the morning, do their school, and then we would have afternoon practices for our sports teams. They would get on the activity bus at 3:30, something like that. They get home earlier on Friday rather than 7, 8 o'clock at night as well. So.
Yeah.
Question?
For the students that show up on Fridays that either are above or below, are they still going to be expected to do the work that the other teachers have assigned for the kids that are choosing to stay home and do it online?
It'll be very similar assignments. There will be a remediation for those kids that need to catch up, but there will be probably enrichment for the students that are virtual learners during that time. So it won't. I don't know how, if you've talked about that as a staff, but what you're asking is if they go to classes, those 4 periods, do they have another assignment that they would have to catch up with? Have you guys addressed that?
So, for example, if I was expecting my students to complete whatever assignments we've been working on that week, so like for this week, we've been working on vocabulary squares, we've been working on a biography assignment, they've had time in class to work on it. Friday, the plan, if this was an ITM Friday, would be you'd work on it over the weekend. That would be your assignment. Make sure it's done by Monday. Some students, they're done. They've already finished it and we're halfway through the week. Others, they're still moving along. And so, yeah, if I had a kid who then also came in Friday and the reason that their grade was below 75 was because they had to make up the test, that's probably going to take up my time with them. So it might be they took the test with me, something we have to do together so I can monitor and supervise, and then maybe they would have to finish that biography at home. But they had been given that time in class before to work on it. So I'm not trying to, that's not an additional assignment. I'm not giving them the biography and saying everyone's got to do this on Friday. This was just something we have been working on. It's just expected they'll be done by Monday.
Yeah, a lot of reteach and a lot of reinforcement. And we'll have to monitor this as well, but I wouldn't expect that teachers would give an additional assignment on Fridays. They will be reteaching, or they will enrich, or they will remediate the things that they did on Monday through Thursday.
So I would see it as the students who were with me on Friday, we're going to make up missing assignments. We're going to retake tests that were below 70% threshold. And then those students at home who they didn't need to do those things because they got high enough scores, they would be looking through the notes. They would be finishing any assignments that weren't done. That's my current plan.
So the expectations for the ones that stay home? They check in on their Google
Yep.
account
And they do their whatever assignment that the teacher has delivered for them for that day. So it might be that they review their notes. It might be that they read an article. It just depends on whatever the teacher assigns for those students that are going to be remote learners, virtual learners during that time. They will need to have whatever the expectations are from the teacher, which will most likely be communicated on a Thursday to the class. They will have to have that completed by Monday, and the teachers will need to do a check of that. And if they can do it via Google Classroom, then they log into Google Classroom and they do their work via Google Classroom. They can do that again. They can do that at 10 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock at night, or they can do that on Saturday or Sunday, depending on what fits into their schedule. So that's kind of the incentive of this, is that you can learn anywhere, everywhere, right? It doesn't have to be in a classroom on a certain period of the day during a certain day. You can learn anywhere, and that's part of our goal, is to expand our learning opportunities to 24/7, 365. We want with technology that a kid can become as smart as they possibly want to be with technology, the internet, and some learning platforms that we have. So, I don't know if I answered that.
Unlike what we've experienced when we were doing remote learning, our students who are allowed to stay home on Friday do not have to log into a virtual session with the teacher. The teacher is at that point in time providing the support to the students in the classroom who needed that additional support. The students who are at home are having an independent activity, so it's not a new learning. It'll be something that is reinforcing what they've already been learning during the week that they can complete on their own. So when they check into their Google Classroom, it's not a virtual session with the teacher. It's I'm checking into Google Classroom, I'm seeing here's my assignment, and I'm completing that task on my own. And then my submission is my attendance for that class. And so when Dr. Koerperich says they can work on it Saturday, Sunday, it's because they just need to log in there, see what their assignment is, complete that assignment, and submit it. And they would be marked 1, completed for that assignment, and 2, present for that Friday.
Yeah. And we're navigating the unknown right now. This is very creative, innovative. It'll take some time for us, and we'll be flexible in how we manage the students during this transition time, but it'll become the norm eventually. Kids are resilient. Kids will figure stuff out. Teachers will as well. They're very flexible and fluid. So we'll get it down. It may take a few weeks. It may take a couple months to get that pattern down. But again, this is just on Fridays, and so we're going to have normal school on Monday through Thursday, and we'll be communicating throughout. So, Donna, did you have a question?
Well, realistically speaking, when will you be running reports on Wednesday? Will it be the morning, the afternoon, or the end of the school day? Realistically speaking, to get more teachers to put in that information so you can run that report.
So the question was, when on Wednesday will we be running the report? Most likely it'll be earlier in the day, because we're going to need to use that report to prepare the communication that's going to go out on Thursday. So we would need that earlier in the day so we can prepare the emails that are going to go out and make sure that communication happens.
And most likely, teachers are not going to give an assignment on Tuesday and say, this is due on Wednesday, and I'm going to need to grade all these by Wednesday so that I can post them in the common sense says, they'll say, here's your assignment on Tuesday, this is due on Monday, I'll grade it, or maybe it's due on Friday or whatever if it's via Google Classroom, so I have time to grade it, so I have time to post it as well. So, yeah, the system of grading and inputting grades is going to be a challenge, but we're going to have to adapt to that. And I encourage all parents to ensure that they have access to their Infinite Campus parent portal. You can figure out your child's attendance, you can get their grades, you can have real-time data of how your student is doing through that online Infinite Campus portal that you can get on your phone. Go ahead.
If a student plays a sport, do they need to be here on Fridays if they're over the 75%?
It's a great question, and that has surfaced as well. If they are not, or if they're above 75% in all their classes, they can come on the time that sports practice starts. They don't need to be here in the morning. Now, if they're riding the bus, we have kids that live in Greasewood that are on our basketball team. That's a great opportunity to have transportation in. So yes, they should come and they should participate in the morning sessions and do whatever they need to do to be successful, and then they could transition to their sports activity in the afternoon. But if they are above 75% and they're not qualified to come, or they don't have to come on Fridays, they don't have to attend. Now, one of the things you cannot do, and I think we mentioned this already, is come for one period, and then now if your parents check you out, or if there's some kind of a mechanism for you to have responsibility to go somewhere else under adult guidance, but you're not going to be able to check yourself out, and you're here for those 4 periods under our supervision and our guidance. Did you have something, Dan?
Yeah, I was going to add in, you're asking about the sports players. It's always a difficulty every year because you get some sports like baseball, softball, they're gone all the time. So that Friday, maybe if we don't have as many games that day, that'll be a great time to get them caught up and to help them. Because I've been here for 15 years, and when we hit spring and we hit some of those sports and they're gone so often because we don't have lights on the field, things like that, it's hard for them to keep their grades up. I'm impressed when they're still rocking an A and they've been going to all their games and they're on varsity, maybe even playing JV some games, but that's usually the exception. That's not normally the norm. So having that Friday time with them is going to be awesome. I wish we'd already started ITM, honestly, because I've got students who need to retake a test, and Friday would be perfect for that. So.
And one of the things that I know parents get this, I know teachers get this to some degree, that these kids are really putting in 16, 17 hours on some days. If we had to do this as an adult in our work environment, we would be throwing a fit. The times when you get up, you go to work, which is school for them, the intensity of having all of that work to do, and then going home and having chores to do. Many of our kids have jobs, and then they have homework on top of that. We're realistic that isn't taxing. That's burnout. There's some social and emotional things that go along with that. So we're hoping that we can relieve some of the stress on our students as well. But they still have to be independent. They still have to be aggressive. They still have to help themselves succeed. That's going to be the pivotal point. Any final questions? Well, we've spent about 40 minutes on this, and I really appreciate our parents that are in the audience this evening. I really appreciate our student workers, and Jessica Paz is running the show. Mike Burks and his media class has set this up. It's sometime I would like for you to come in person. This is a really cool environment. I thank Mr. Hargrave and Mr. Mitchell for your good work. Just a quick summary. How this will impact students. Let's get to that 75%. That is our goal. Our goal is obviously higher than that, but that's a minimum goal that we have. We're raising high expectations for our students. We're going to provide in-school support. We've never had that before. We're going to shoot towards 100% graduation rate. There's really not a reason why that can't occur. 100% graduation rates, every one of the students in here. We want 100% passing rate. We don't want you to have to come back during the summer to take classes because you failed a class. This can give you the in-school support during the course of the year to be able to help with that. And again, it fulfills our mission in the Holbrook Unified School District, which is to helping unique students develop. That's what we're doing. We have very unique features within our school system, with our student dynamics, with everything about our school system is very unique. And so this will hopefully make sure that we are helping our unique students develop. Parents, log into Infinite Campus. Very important that you have that access. We'll have parent-teacher conferences the night before that starts. You can meet with the teachers. You can meet with our office staff, Mr. Hargrave. You can get access to that. We'd like 100% parent participation at parent-teacher conferences so we can all be on the same page. Make sure you have a current email address because the grades will be emailed out. So make sure that we have a current email address, and please reinforce the ideology behind this. As parents, we're very influential. This is helping you, but you also have an opportunity to come and get the support that you need on a Friday without additional assignments, without the rigor that you would normally find on Friday. You'll have a lot of support systems around you, so help push that with the students. They may not get this automatically. They'll have to learn that we're doing this for them. And then, again, make sure you come to parent-teacher conferences to get things set up. If you're a student, take advantage of this opportunity. This is very unique in what we're doing, and we're doing this for you, only for you. That's the purpose of this. This is a life skill. It's making that extra effort, making sure that if you're behind, you get caught up. If you're ahead, you continue to stay ahead. Those are life skills that we want to make sure that we reinforce here. It's still a half a day of school. So we're not asking you to go to 7 periods on Friday. It's still a half a day of school. You still have 2.5 days for your weekend. Finish your 7 periods by Monday. Monday is your 7 periods of whatever assignments that you have been assigned by your teacher. Make sure that Monday you get that done. And then let's go for 100% graduation rate. That is our goal, guys. That's our goal. I don't know why we can't accomplish that. We were 86% last year. Let's get that other 14% and get that up to 100%. So thank you once again for everybody that helped with this, and of course Mr. Hargrave and Mr. Mitchell for explaining and helping to elaborate on what we're trying to accomplish here. We'll wrap up our Roost Ed Talk. We once again thank you for joining us, and until next time, go Roadrunners.